Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming today. I'm delighted to be here with you. And I'll speak on the Bhagavad-gita based on one of my latest books. We'll be getting physical copies of those books, which we'll give to you as soon as they arrive. And then we can read from there also. But till then, I'll talk about how a common problem that we all face is that whatever social circle we are in, it could be a devotee circle, it could be a professional circle, it could be our family, it could be our extended family and relatives. We all sometimes feel that we are not accepted over there, we're not respected over there, we're not appreciated over there. One of the biggest feelings of pain or discontentment in life comes when we feel as if we don't belong to the place where we are supposed to belong to. So, for example, this can happen. This can happen to us now, say when we live in a distant country. Now, we may feel that, okay, I'm here, but I do not belong here in America. So that feeling can come for various reasons. But that feeling of not being accepted, that feeling of not feeling connected, how do we deal with that? That's what we'll discuss today. This is based on the Bhagavad-gita verse. Can all of you see this from wherever you are? Okay. So you can repeat after me this affirmation, which is like also a prayer. My dear Lord, help me to learn how to help others to learn. Yes. So many times when we feel that people are not understanding me, people are not appreciating me, it is at such times very easy to start blaming them. That people are only terrible, or these kind of people are terrible. And that is, it's possible. But in general, if that's the explanation we go towards right in the beginning, it's very difficult to develop good relationships. There's one American comedian who said that, I love humanity. It is just human beings that I can't get along with. So, especially now when we try to become spiritual, we may read lofty verses like Panditaha Samadarshina, that we see equal vision towards everyone. Yeah, I have an equal vision towards everyone. My vision is that I equally dislike everyone. No, we don't like that. There was one person who was telling me that my life is filled with friends that I do not like. And if I cut off my relationship with all the people I do not like, I will have no friends left. So that's an unfortunate situation. That's an undesirable situation. So how do we communicate with others? When there are communication problems, there are connection problems, how do we deal with that? That's what we'll try to discuss today. So let's read this prayer. My dear Lord, can you repeat after me? Help me to learn how to help others to learn. So if we feel that somebody is just not getting me, now instead of thinking they are dumb, you think maybe I need to learn better how they can understand. That's the mood that we will discuss today. So let's repeat this verse. Na buddhi bhedam janayed ajnanam karma sanginam joshayet sarva karmani vidwan yuktah samacharan. The wise should not disturb the mind of those to worldly work inclined. Let them act while you gently show the path to truth that they may know. I done a poetic translation of the Gita's verses over here. This is Bhagavad-gita 3.26. So let's look at what is going on over here. I'll write and draw some things to explain. So broadly, the challenge we are discussing is, this color is not being seen, okay. So, is this visible? Yes. So when we don't feel accepted, connected, appreciated, respected, so when we don't feel accepted or connected with others, what do we do? So I'll discuss this broadly in today's class based on this verse. So what is broadly Krishna saying over here? That different people are of different natures. Different people are at different levels. So just because somebody does not understand you does not mean that we have to disturb them by saying that they are foolish. Rather, we have to see, okay, what can I do to help them understand? So for example, if we are at a particular level, maybe intellectually we are at a particular level, at the level of, maybe at a culture we are at a particular level, maybe at the level of education we are at a particular level, and that may be higher than others. Now we may expect that they should take a high jump and come up to the level we are at. But sometimes when we expect that they take a high jump, they may try that and they end up going further down. So they are unable to take that leap. Then we have a certain expectation from them, and when that expectation creates too much pressure on them, they end up, instead of coming closer, going further away from us. So when we face problems in our life, say for example, relational problems. So in general, to deal with the problems, we need a more nuanced approach. Some people, basically, when we feel disconnected, our mind can go towards extremes. That one extreme is that people are terrible. People are terrible, people are cold, people don't care for me. And this feeling can come even for devotees with other devotees. Sometimes we are going through some challenges and difficulties and we expect some help, we expect some understanding from others. But others don't seem to understand us. So one extreme could be that we say people are terrible. And people are just so terrible, nobody cares for me. There was one atheistic philosopher who was once asked, do you believe in hell? He said, yes, of course. And everyone was surprised. He said, if you're an atheist, how do you believe in hell? He said, hell means other people. So that is one extreme where we go to. One of the kleshas in life is Adi. We have broadly three kinds of kleshas that come to us. We as souls are situated in three broad circles. So if we are souls, the soul is situated in the circle of the body, soul is situated in the circle of society, and the soul is situated in the circle of nature. And from each of these, some klesha can come to us. So what is the klesha that comes from nature called? Adi Daivik. Yes. The klesha that comes from society? Adi Bhautik. Yes. And the klesha that comes from our own body and mind? Adhyatmik. Yes. So now, in many ways, among these three, the second is the most difficult to tolerate. If there is a storm, if there's a tornado, if there's an earthquake, if the temperature goes very low, okay, it's difficult, it can be devastatingly problematic, but we accept it. What can we do? We grit our teeth and we learn to live with it. Because that, in one sense, we see nature as, okay, it's just nature, it's the natural forces and they sometimes hurt us. Similarly, with respect to our body, when there is sickness, when there is disease, it's extremely troubling, but that's also, okay, I got a disease, as long as it is there, I have to live with it. But with respect to people, it is most difficult. Because what happens is, we have expectations from people. And we often feel, how could you do like this? Why are you treating me like this? We, in one sense, see people as conscious agents. And agents means they make choices. So why are you being so mean to me? Why are you being so cold to me? And that can make the social pain the most difficult. So what does pain from other living beings mean? We can have mosquitoes. We can have mujahideen, deadly terrorist fanatics. We can have mosquitoes, we can have mujahideen, we can have mother-in-law. So now, when this Adi Bhautik Klesh comes, it becomes very difficult to deal with it. So when these kleshas come to us, the Gita talks that distress in this world, it falls in 3 different categories. So we all need to become, like there is disaster management, government has department for disaster management. So like that, we all, while living in life, need to become expert in distress management. So we talk about stress management, the Gita talks about distress management. Arjuna is in great distress. So when we have to do distress management, first, how do we manage? We have to understand what is the source of distress. So we'll talk about an acronym, IAS. Now, IAS is a tough competitive exam in India. But distress management can also be that way tough. So distress broadly falls in 3 categories. I is that which is inevitable. The Gita talks about this kind of distress at many places. Say, for example, it talks about it in 2.14. That matra sparshas tu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkhadaha. This is inevitable distress. Just like weather changes, similarly happiness and distress will come in our lives. So some distress is inevitable in our life. Now, some distress is avoidable. Avoidable means, Krishna talks about it in 5.22. Yehi samsparchaja bhoga dukkha yaunaya evate. It is, we do the activities that lead to distress. It is because of our own actions that distress is being created. So, if we are walking along a road and we bump against someone, and that person gets angry and bumps us back, and then we punch that person, and then that person takes out a knife and stabs us. Now, we could say that this whole thing could have been avoided. Maybe if we had been careful, we might not have bumped into that person. Even if that person pushed us back, we could have avoided losing our temper. We needn't have punched them. So many times the problems that come are avoidable. So when we give in to our impulses, when we give in to our kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mad, matsarya, the problems that come are avoidable problems. And we'll talk about how different approaches are required for dealing with different kinds of problems. Now, the third is, these are strengthening problems. That means by going through these problems, we become stronger. Krishna talks about this in 18.37. He says, Yattadagre vishamiva pariname amrutopamam. That which tastes like poison in the beginning will taste like nectar in the end. So, these are the kind of problems, it is good to go through those problems. So, for example, if you want to become healthier, we may need to do some regular exercise. We may have to go to a gym or do some yoga. Learning anything new or disciplining ourselves to do something somewhat demanding is not easy. Initially, it's like poison. But if we go through that poison, we will come to a nectar point eventually. So this is the kind of distress that helps us to come to a better place. So now if we consider how do we deal with these 3 kinds of distress, so there are completely different approaches to this. So inevitable distress, we need to accept. Accept that this is just a fact of life. Avoidable distress, we need to correct. Okay, let me stop doing the action that will lead to distress. I need to correct that behavior, change ourselves, counter that kind of action. And the strengthening that is there, for that we need to train ourselves. Train ourselves, you could say toughen ourselves, so that we can go through this and we can grow through this. So now it's important to recognize that all kinds of distress are not the same. So broadly, these three kinds of distress and three approaches to these three kinds of distress. That's what we'll discuss. But now, while this can be applied to all kinds of distress, right now I will focus on Adi Bhautik Klesh, the social distress that comes in our life. So, the social distress means that when we deal with people, so basically we live in society and generally we do something for someone and the other person does something for us. That's what reciprocation is. Now, reciprocation is a basic foundation for any interaction. That is just natural. Now, reciprocation can be broadly of two kinds. One is it can be transactional. Transactional means, say, we go to a shop and we are polite with the attendant is polite with us. We give some money, they give us some product. So that interaction has some reciprocation. It's just transactional. At the end of the day, we may not even remember who that person over there is. Now, as contrast to that, some reciprocation can be transformational. Transformational means through the interactions, we become a better person, or through the interacting with us, other person becomes better. So maybe in our workplace we interact with many people, in our social lives we may interact with many people. So that may be largely transactional. So we could say most of our casual relationships, they are transactional. And generally in transactional relationships, even if somebody misbehaves with us, somebody mistreats us, it's annoying, it can be irritating, but doesn't cause that much wounds. Say, if now America is much more inclusive, but say 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago, there was a lot of racial discrimination. There was segregation. One of the reasons that India post-independence aligned with USSR and not with USA, with the second world, not the first world, many reasons were there. But one of them was both Gandhi and Nehru criticized America for the segregation that was there over here. Segregation means that before the civil rights movement, which Martin Luther launched, there was blacks, if you enter into a bus, blacks were expected to sit behind in the bus. And they're not allowed to come ahead. And Indians were also treated like blacks. So Indians, there are not many Indians at that time here. But those Indians were there, they would also be expected to sit in the back. So the segregation, although America had its declaration of rights and everything, but there was segregation. So many reasons, but one of these was that there is, if we go to a place where racial discrimination is just the norm, then although it is painful, but okay, we have to live with it. What can we do about it? If that is the norm everywhere, say if today also, if we as practicing devotees, if we go to Islamic countries, say in the Middle East, now many Indians, many Hindus go and get employed over there. And there, in general, no practice of any religion except Islam is allowed in public. So now we accept that. Devotee, there is very vibrant devotee communities over there. But those are all private. When devotees do Rath Yatras over there. Rath Yatra they do is they hire the biggest hall and indoor they go round and round and round. So we have lots of programs, but we cannot do certain things over there. So in general, if the broader society is in a particular way, just learn to accept that. So now the specifics may vary, but in every situation there will be some inevitable distress that we need to accept. That when say two people come to work together, maybe two people get married and want to build a life together, there will be differences. So if we say that we want to find a person who is like a perfect partner for us, that happens only in romantic movies. And even in those romantic movies, sooner or later, now there's a dose of realism that comes and destroys the idealism. When I go to Canada, there is a devotee couple at whose place I sometimes stay. And So they just joke that the husband is a marketing manager, but he for an international company, but he's also learned to be a priest. He does some ritualistic ceremonies like the thread ceremony or the graha pravesh or even the vivaha. And the wife is in family law. Family law is a polite word for divorce. That's one of the main things that they do. So they joke and they say that we are like the complete power couple. You come to the husband to get married, you come to the wife to get separated. So now, this Mataji was telling me that sometimes people, when they come, because she is female, mostly it's females who come to her when they want to get separated. So sometimes the reasons that they have are, at least to our vision, they seem so frivolous. Now, there could be deeper reasons which they don't know, which they don't tell us, or they themselves not articulate. But one Canadian lady came to her and she said that, I want to divorce my husband. She says, okay. Now, generally in the Western world, things are very categorized and compartmentalized. Say in India, if somebody goes to a lawyer and says, I want to divorce, then if the lawyer is elderly, he'll ask what happened and can you patch up? But here it is that if they want to patch up, then they will go to a marriage counselor. The attorney is not supposed to give any marriage counseling, generally speaking. That is the way it is. So he asked her, okay, what is the reason you want to write? What is the reason? He said that, we can't agree on what temperature of the air conditioning to have in our house. Now, that can be a problem. But if we consider the relative hierarchy of problems, there are people who don't have any air conditioning in their house. There are people who don't even have any house also. So she herself is writing down, she paused. Is that the reason you want to write? He said, yes. He said, see, this woman says, I actually I married quite late. I was waiting for my perfect partner. This is Mr. Right or whatever. And I believed that this person was the perfect partner for me. But she said, if he had been Mr. Right for me, then our body temperature should sink together. So now people can have a lot of unrealistic expectations. So there is some amount of differences that will be there with everyone. Whenever we work with anyone, whenever we closely connect with anyone, there are some differences. Sometimes we may speak certain things, the other person just doesn't understand it. And the other person expects something from us and we don't understand it. That is just the way the life is. So, especially in transformational relationships, so in casual relationships versus serious relationships. So, why I was talking about this difference is that in casual relationships, when there are expectations that are frustrated, there are frustrated expectations. There can be, in both of these relationships, there can be frustrated expectations. But when these happen in casual relationships, that does not cause so much pain. Here, it's little pain. But in serious relationships, it can cause a lot of pain. So when this is happening, there's a lot of pain we are feeling. At that time, we need a sense of perspective, that it's inevitable. Yesterday I gave a class about how we all are not alone in the world. We are a part of God and God has a plan for us. So whenever I talk about this, does God have a plan for us? Especially if I talk this to a Western audience, one of the questions that comes up is that, has God planned a life partner for each one of us? So now the idea is that in the romantic imagination, sometimes you can bring God also as an element of the romantic imagination. Oh, we met, this was a coincidence, and this is we are meant to be together. Maybe, maybe not. But the point is that, if there was a plan like that, if A was supposed to be with B and C was supposed to be with D and E was supposed to be with F and G was supposed to be with H. Now, if one person does something wrong, if A goes and becomes with D, then one person's mistake will disrupt everybody else's life. So is God's plan something so fragile that one person's mistake can disrupt it? No, it's not that simple. See, God's plan is that we learn and grow. That our relationships that are there, they are not just for our material gratification. That, being with you gives me a lot of material pleasure. Our relationships are, yes, that could be one purpose, but it's a small purpose. A much bigger purpose is our relationships are for our spiritual evolution. That through all our relationships, we are meant to grow. So a certain level of feeling not understood, not accepted, not valued, that is just a part of life. And what is inevitable needs to be accepted. So, we can apply this to any situation. Some people say that, okay, I was at an interfaith meeting, and there different people from different religions were talking about the challenges in reaching out to today's world. So there was one pastor who was telling that he was doing a radio show or a TV show where people make a call and ask questions. So he said, I got a question. I'm a Christian. I don't go to any church. He said, I very cautiously, respectfully asked him, can I know why you don't go to any church? He said, I have not yet found a church that agrees with my philosophy. So, we don't go to an institution of God to learn philosophy. We expect it to conform to our philosophy. Sometimes we may expect an ideal society, an ideal community, ideal group of people, an ideal club. Now, we may look for an ideal club. First of all, no ideal club exists in the world. But if an ideal club existed with all ideal members, what would happen is, we would not get an admission there. Because we are not ideal, isn't it? So, we all have to learn that there are certain inevitable sufferings we need to tolerate. Recently, somebody sent a joke to me where a person said that the woman spent her entire life looking for the perfect man. And then she finally found the perfect man. And then it turned out that the perfect man was looking for the perfect woman. And she was not the perfect woman. So nobody is perfect in life. So there is some distress that is inevitable. Now, having said that, it's important that we shouldn't consider that all distress is inevitable. So what are the three kinds of distress we discuss? A was what? Avoidable. And so for avoidable distress, what do we need to do with that? We need to correct it. That which is inevitable, we accept it. So now the problem with this attitude, that some distress is inevitable, so accept it. That does not mean that all distress is inevitable. There is much distress that comes because of our own actions. I was in UK staying at one young devotee's home, and he told me that tomorrow is my wife's wedding anniversary. I said, what do you mean your wife's wedding anniversary? Are you talking about your ex-wife, or what are you talking about? So, is it not your wedding anniversary? He said, all these are sentimental things. I don't believe in these things. So, that was itself a bit of a red signal for me. And then he was driving me and he was telling me he was introduced in his youth to Bhakti, and he wanted to do a lot of service and outreach and do a lot of service. And he had hoped that his wife would support him in that. But he said that my wife is not at all cooperative. She's quite disagreeable. And he said, I have got a realization that Krishna gave me a disagreeable wife so that I'll become detached from material life. Now, he's just beginning his married life. He's 27, 28. I said, wait a minute. Don't jump to that conclusion. Now, don't bring Krishna where it could be your own problem. Isn't it? So then I was at their home and I was taking prasad. The wife was also talking with me. And then she's a very intelligent lady. She was eager to understand what is Krishna consciousness. She had some good questions. And then she started talking with me. She said that I soon realized that as a husband, there are some basic things that a wife would expect. to do some work at home, to take care of certain things. And this devotee was neglecting that because he said, all these are mundane. I want to be transcendental. And naturally, his wife was dissatisfied with him. So I told him that you cannot live like the life of a brahmachari if you are a grahastha, isn't it? The grahastha is also ashram. It's also a place where you can take shelter of Krishna. So you need to understand your life partner and learn to work together. Understand what our expectations are. You cannot fulfill all the expectations, but sometimes when we completely neglect a role, that ends up creating far greater problems. So when we talk about avoidable suffering, what it means is that there is some suffering that comes because we could say it's inevitable in the sense that it's coming from our past karma. Maybe because sometimes in India they say, what karma had I done that I've got a person like you in my life. People may say it or they may publish out aloud, or sometimes they just speak it in their mind or speak it to a third person. Now it is possible that some of the problems that come in our life are because of our past karma. But it is just as possible that the problems that are coming in our life are because of our present karma. It is not that all the things that happen in our life are only because of our past karma. That in general, now broadly speaking, as I said, problems, when it's a problem that are inevitable and problems that are avoidable. So broadly, inevitable problems, we can say they are due to past. We probably did something and they are because of past karma. So if a kid goes to a particular school and that school there are some mean kids, there are some bullies. Now of course, bullying should be stopped by the authorities, by the parents, whatever is required. But we cannot protect our children from every single unpleasant interaction with every child in school. There are some kids who will just be mean. And our children need to learn to develop a little bit of a thick skin. The parents cannot, neither parents nor teachers can protect everyone all the time. So that there is some suffering that is inevitable. And we could say that is because of past karma. Everybody has some suffering that comes from their past. At the same time, there is also suffering which is avoidable. Avoidable suffering is because of present karma. That means, say, yeah. Can you just give? Just two, three people can share a copy. So the avoidable suffering is because of our present karma. That means that there is suffering which. So there will be copies being distributed to you. We'll read from this. When you get the book, you can go to page 120 in the book. Page 120 in 326. So this is something we can read from and we'll discuss something based on that. So let's look at this. So sometimes understanding this point that suffering can be because of both past karma and present karma is quite important. Let's look at this. So would anyone like to read the first paragraph? If you have the book, it's page 130, 120 and 121 in the book. Yes, please.
Hare Krishna. My dear Lord, you emphasize that good intention is not a substitute for good intelligence, even when I want to do good for others and guide them toward a higher level of consciousness so that they ultimately connect with you. I need to carefully consider whether such instruction might be disruptive for them, even to the point of being destructive.
Yes. So what happens is that sometimes we want to help others. We think we are doing something good for them. We have good intention. But sometimes the other person may just not accept our good intentions. No, we try to do something for someone and that person just hurts us or hits back at us. We try to be kind to someone and that person is rude to us. So it's very disruptive at that time. But then why is that happening? So we could assume that, it's my bad karma that I'm surrounded by people like that. But generally speaking, one of the key principles That is talked about in Nyaya. Now, Nyaya is Vedic logic. In Nyaya, whenever we are trying to understand the cause of something, so in this case, cause of distress. So it is said that first look at the drushta cause. Drushta is the visible cause. Start with the visible cause, and then if the visible cause does not make sense, then go to the adrushta cause. Adrushta is the invisible cause. So now, what is the drushta cause? If somebody is not dealing with us properly, the first thing you need to question is that, have I rubbed this person wrong in some way? Have I done something because of which this person is agitated or is rude to me? So start with that, and we try to address that as much as we can. Now, sometimes beyond our capacity, beyond even our comprehension, people may just be harsh with us. Now, there's always going to be some incompatibility, some issues when we work with people. But don't assume that whatever problems we are having are inevitable problems. We have to live with them. It is possible through the better communication, through better understanding of each other, that problems can be decreased. So, in general, in the 16th chapter, Krishna talks about. So, when we say correct means what? And Krishna talks about a quality called apaishunam. Apaishunam means it's aversion to fault finding. That generally speaking, what happens is whenever there is a problem in us, whenever we face any kind of problem, our mind goes towards two things. It goes towards raga and it goes towards dvesha. So raga means we seek some quick pleasure. Or dvesha means we seek a villain. So pleasure means, say, if there's an argument between two people, both just go to the separate room and start watching separate TVs. Or just both start surfing on their phone, don't talk with each other. Sometimes the typical picture of two people disagreeing is two people sitting next to each other, but they are looking away from each other, looking at their own phones. So like, one is that we just seek some quick pleasure. Through pleasure, we try to forget the problem. That is raga. And it is that if that doesn't work, if the problem is too much, then we start looking for a villain. Now, because of this person, all this problem is coming in my life. Sometimes you may blame that person itself. Sometimes we blame somebody who recommended that person to us. So you start develop a business partnership with someone, and then that person turns out to be unreliable. And whoever recommended that person, we blame that person, or we blame this person itself. So what happens is our mind tends to look for a villain. And Krishna says that for those who are of the Daivi Sampada, those who are of a divine nature, they are averse to fault finding. They are not looking for a villain in their life. That now, could there be villains in our life? Of course. But if we are constantly looking for villains to blame our problems on, then we take away our sense of agency. If you look at the lives of the Pandavas, they were just small children when they came to the kingdom of Hastinapur, and there Duryodhana was trying to assassinate them. Duryodhana tried to poison Bhima, then they tried to burn their entire family, including even their mother. And what did the Pandavas do? The Pandavas were not obsessed with the Kauravas. Okay, the Kauravas, finally allowed them to come back, and they said, okay, we'll give you half of the kingdom. But they gave them the wilder half of wilderness, that is Khandav Prastha. And the Pandavas worked hard and converted into Indraprastha. So they were often treated unfairly. But what they did was, they made the best out of it. They made the best. So they were, in fact, the Kauravas, especially Duryodhana, was much more obsessed with the Pandavas, and the Pandavas were obsessed with the Kauravas. See, it's ironic that the Kaurava, if you consider the interaction between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, it was, if we consider, the Pandavas did not do anything to hurt the Kauravas. Now we could say the Pandavas, their existence itself was a threat. But the Pandavas never demanded that we want the entire kingdom. Just let us have half the kingdom. Ready to settle even for 5 villages also. So there was practically no hurt from the Pandavas to the Kauravas. Now there was a lot of hurt from the Kauravas to the Pandavas. And so although the Pandavas never hurt the Kauravas, and the Kauravas hurt the Pandavas a lot, still it was the Kauravas who thought of the Pandavas as villains in their life. The Pandavas never thought of never thought of them as villains. They didn't focus on them. Okay, we have our own kingdom, let's work on our own kingdom. So the point is sometimes that how much we are hurt by someone does not determine how much we think of someone as a villain. It is just that if we are insecure, we're just looking for someone to blame for our problems, then we end up looking for a villain in our life. So generally we want to avoid both these things. So we move from the drushta to the adrushta cause, only when the drushta does not work. So now correct would mean what? Correct could mean that we learn how to communicate better, or we try to, instead of judging the other person, try to understand the other person. When the other person gets angry, generally speaking, when we say apaishunam, so generally what happens is, whenever there's a conflict, when there's a difference of opinion, it is very easy for us to point out what the other person did wrong. And that's true, the other person may have done something wrong. But what requires a lot of humility and courage is to consider what I have done wrong. One of the standard practices in if there's like serious mediation is, this is actually a principle in tarka also, in logic or in argumentation. There is that before you dismantle or destroy the other person's argument, you phrase the other person's argument in the best possible way that you can. And if we can just have that patience, I am angry with you because of this. And you are angry with me because of this. So instead of just proving to the other person why my reasons for becoming angry with you are valid, if I can just, okay, you tell me why you are angry with me, and I will rephrase that. Not that I accept it, not that I agree that all the points are valid, but it is like if we try to hear the other person to understand what they're saying. We don't have to accept their understanding, but many times if we just understand, oh, you think like this. Now, if I had been thinking like that about some other person, I would also have been just as angry. Now what happens is, when we hear somebody accusing us of something, we get just angry about, how could you accuse me of this? How could you think like this about me? What kind of person do you think I am? What kind of relationship do we have if you think like this about me? Isn't it? We tend to become very defensive. We become defensive or aggressive. But if we just think, when the other person is making accusations, they may feel outrageous accusations to us. But when that person making accusations, for them those accusations are true. They may not be true actually, but for them they are true. And if those accusations were true, then how angry would anyone be? So in general, when you talk about avoidable problems, that there are 3 degrees. Like when 2 people disagree, there is disagreement in terms of the judgment, the decision, the conclusion that somebody has allowed it. That, okay, so we had a program and we wanted to cook for, say, we said 2 people were in charge of the kitchen. One person said, let's cook for 50 people. Another person said, let's cook for 70 people. And we cook for 50 people and then 70 people come along. And then we blame the other person. Because of you now we have so much problem. We don't have enough food. Now, that is a judgment issue. Everybody can make mistakes in judgment. Now, when there are differences, when there are conflicts that arise, where we question the judgment of the other person, that is painful. Because nobody likes to have their judgment questioned. But that is not as bad enough. What is more painful is when the ability is questioned. You are just not competent enough to be in charge of this position. You are not capable of doing this role. No, you made this mistake. Our first instinct is, no, it was not a mistake. Okay, even if it's a mistake. You made this mistake, therefore you should be fired from this job. You should be removed from this service. You should not be doing this thing. You just don't have the ability. That is even more painful, isn't it? Naturally. Because there it's no, judgment error is basically one time I made a mistake, but I can learn from the mistake and I can improve. But it's sometimes somebody says that you cannot learn from this only. Like I was trying to once do a mediation between two people, and one of them said, the one thing I have learned about you is that you can't learn even one thing. Now, if somebody has an attitude like that, it's going to be very difficult to have any kind of reconciliation. So when the ability is questioned, that's bad enough. But the most damning is when the motive itself is questioned. Or the morality itself is questioned. That, at that time, that means, you didn't want this program to succeed. You wanted people to go away from the temple. Or you wanted that because this program was led by this person, you wanted this person's program to be a failure. That's why you made a mess of all these things. So once we start questioning the motive, the very character, the integrity of a person, then that's a point of no return. It becomes very, very difficult to come back from there. Like two parents may disagree about what is the best way to parent a child. One parent might be a little more lenient, the other parent might be a little more strict. And that's understandable. And who is right? Well, it's very difficult to know. Because it's something which only time tells. What is the impact of a particular thing? But generally, both parents are convinced that the other person has the welfare of the child at heart. Whatever they are doing, it's well-intentioned. But if one parent starts believing that the other parent does not want the good of the child, then there cannot be any relationship based on parenting at that time. So generally what happens when we have a difficulty with people, if there are people we like, we try to discount their mistake as simply a judgment error. And there are people we dislike, we try to ascribe that mistake to their character flaw. It's like if somebody eats a lot of food and we had food enough, we had a cake which was meant for 5 people and one person eats half of the cake. And then now if we like that person, we'll say, maybe he was very hungry. Maybe he didn't know that there's only a limited amount of cake. If we don't like that person, what a glutton. This is Kumbhakarna or Bakasur ka avatar hai. Yeah, this person, we will just ascribe the worst motive to it. So in general, this is where our likes and dislikes can play a very dangerous distorting role. So this particular thing, these 3 things, this is got, if you consider a relationship, there can be a traffic jam in the relationship. But if it's at the judgment level, it is the easiest to overcome it. If it's at the motive level, it's very, very difficult to overcome it that time. So there are many problems in relationships, in interaction that are avoidable. How are they avoidable? So when I said correct it means what? It's not just that we correct ourselves, that we are making some mistakes. But it could be our mistake may not be in our actions, our mistake may be in our evaluation of others' actions also. So correcting has just 2 broad parts to it. First is look inward rather than outward. That means what may I have done to make this person angry. Don't assume this person itself is a bad person. This person just doesn't like me. Look inward to try to see what might be my problem. And the second is give the benefit of the doubt to the other person. The benefit of the doubt means what? That give the benefit of the doubt to the other person. This basically means that whenever there is anything that has happened which has caused a problem, try to start with the least negative motive. Least negative motive means, or least negative cause. That is, assume that it's a judgment error. That if we told someone, okay, please get this, we need this, and they forget to get it. Okay, maybe there is a lot on their minds, maybe they're going through some stress because of which they forgot. Now we may also start with that. So start with the least negative explanation. And then sometimes we may have to move towards the next most negative explanation. But don't jump to that. And this is where communication is very important. Otherwise what happens is, we just let ourselves be resentful, feel resentful because that other person is doing this wrong, that wrong. And then after that, at one particular time, we explode at them. For 1,000 times, we just stay calm. And then one time they do something small. And for the 1,111 times that they have done something wrong, we explode for something very small. And then we start speaking things which are basically ascribing the wrong motive to that person itself. And then that can be devastating. So many relational problems are something which are avoidable. So we avoid them. And the last part is, what is the acronym we are discussing? IAS. S is, there are problems that are strengthening. So strengthening means that it is by dealing with different kinds of people, or people who think differently from us, that our conception goes. So this is where we need to train ourselves. Now to some extent I already spoke about training. One aspect of training to deal with avoidable problems is and give others the benefit of the doubt. That's a part of the training. But here I'll focus on just 2 more points before we conclude. That when there are problems, that sometimes working with people who think differently from us, that is what enables us to grow. That is what enables us to expand our conceptions. Now we grow in Krishna consciousness in 2 different ways. We often talk about deepening our Krishna consciousness. We want to go deeper into our relationship with Krishna. We want to be more attentive in our chanting. We want to go deep into Shastra and understand Shastra. This is important, no doubt. But Srila Prabhupada did not just want us to be Krishna conscious. He started the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He wanted us to be a society. And for a society, we need to broaden our Krishna consciousness, not just deepen our Krishna consciousness. Broaden means that there are many different ways in which we can approach Krishna. There are many different ways in which Krishna can attract different people. So there are many different ways in which people move ahead in their life and in their spiritual life. So when we interact with people in a non-judgmental way, trying to understand where they are coming from, then that broadens our conceptions. It helps us to understand, okay, why is this person doing like this? How are things working over here? So when I was introduced to Bhakti, I was introduced in a very, very conservative, very regimented ashram in India. And I had a very black and white kind of understanding of Krishna consciousness. This is what is Krishna consciousness, this is all Maya. But then last 10 years, I have been traveling across the world. Almost 8-9 months I'm outside India now. And when I travel across, I just meet different devotees who face different challenges. And the culture, the social circumstance, it's all so different. And that has helped me a lot to understand that we cannot just take one version of Krishna consciousness and superimpose it on everyone. Everybody has a relationship with Krishna, and everybody will pursue their relationship with Krishna in their particular way. So generally, this broadening of our conceptions, that can help us to become more mature, more flexible, and we can actually attract more and more people, not just towards Krishna, but in general in our life, so that we can have more social harmony apart from spiritual harmony. So there are many problems that help us to broaden our conception. So if somebody is thinking in a particular way, we can just dismiss. No, you're a fool. You are a terrible person. But no, maybe they're approaching it from a very different perspective. I'll conclude with one image over here and one conception. So if we consider this to be Krishna, or just consider this to be reality. Reality could be of a problem, ultimate reality is Krishna. then I may be approaching reality from here. And somebody else may be approaching reality from here. Now, if you consider that reality is the supreme reality, Krishna, both ways it's applicable. So, when we approach the reality, what happens is we may be understanding the situation. We may be understanding Krishna, we may be connecting with Krishna, we may be experiencing Krishna. And that's perfectly true. But in the Bhagavad-gita, there is a fascinating series of verses. In 10.8, Krishna talks about those who are Buddha. Buddha is a variant of the more widely known word in the Western world, Buddha. So Buddha means enlightened. So Krishna says, those who know me are Buddha. But then, in the next verse, 10.9, he says, what do these Buddha people do when they meet others? They are bodhayantaha. So, bodhayantaha is, the word over there is uses, they enlighten each other. Now, if they are already enlightened, why do they need to enlighten each other? Isn't it? So, the understanding over here is that enlightenment is both a destination and a journey. Enlightenment is a destination in the sense that for all of us to ultimately understand that Krishna is the supreme object of love. So Krishna is the supreme object of love. That is enlightenment. And aham sarvasya prabho mattaha sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhavalam samanvita. So Krishna is the supreme object of love. That is enlightenment as a destination. So after trying out many different objects to love, we ultimately come to the point of loving Krishna. And that is becoming enlightened. But enlightenment is also a journey in the sense that even when we learn, even when we know that Krishna is the object of love, two things we always keep learning. First is how lovable Krishna is. So, what attracts me to Krishna may be different from what attracts you to Krishna. And by talking with you, I can understand, some other feature of Krishna. How lovable Krishna is, how attractive Krishna Bhakti is. And second is, how I can love Krishna more. So, when the queens of Krishna met Draupadi, when they met, the first thing that they asked is that, Draupadi, how do you keep 5 husbands satisfied? There are so many of us and we are trying to satisfy Krishna. So they were having a service and they were learning how do you do that service well. So the idea is we can all learn how to love Krishna more. Similarly, we are all approaching life and we can always learn from others. That doesn't mean everything that everybody is doing is right. Everybody does something wrong, and it's not that we want to accept what is wrong from them. But okay, we can this way, when we start with this approach that there is always something for me to learn over here, then we can keep learning and keep growing. And this way, we can keep broadening our conceptions. When Srila Prabhupada came to America, he first stayed at the house of Sally and Gopal Agarwal. This was is an Indian who had come to America, married a Western woman, and they sponsored Prabhupada's visa at that time out of a courtesy for their father-in-law who had requested them. They had no interest in themselves practicing bhakti. And Prabhupada, after talking with them for a short while, recognized that they are not spiritually inclined or interested. So Prabhupada did not push them too much. Prabhupada stayed at their house for about 15 days or a month or so before he moved to New York. He came with a 2-month visa. But when he was staying there, this Sally Agarwal, she has written about her experiences, and that's mentioned in the book Lilamrit, the biography of Srila Prabhupada. So she says several interesting things. One of the things she says is that Swamiji was so interested in learning everything American. He wanted to know how the vacuum cleaner worked. He wanted to know how the elevator worked. He wanted to know how the subway worked. So now, did Prabhupada come from India to America to learn how the vacuum cleaner worked? No. Prabhupada, by being curious about these things, was trying to learn how the American mind works, how people think, how people live. And then by that, he was learning how best he could communicate Krishna consciousness with others. And what Srila Prabhupada achieved was certainly at one level because of his spiritual purity. But at another level, Prabhupada had that attitude of connecting and learning. And that's how he was able to attract so many people. So we can all expand our horizons. When there are differences of opinion, when we feel that people don't understand, accept us, we can actually learn through that situation how I can broaden my conceptions. And that's where we can connect with more and more people. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. Our topic was when we don't feel accepted. That when we can't connect with people, when we are not able to deal with people properly, so what do we do about it? So I talked about broadly 4 points. I started by talking about the nature of distress. All distress is not the same. What is the acronym? IAS. I was inevitable. So some distress in life is just inevitable, as Krishna talks about it, that agamapaino nityas. And some distress is avoidable. So avoidable distress he talks about in 5.22. And then there is strengthening distress. So this is where basically what happens, but we grow through this. So strengthening distresses, he talks about 18.37. Yatad agre vishamiva pariname amrutopamam. And discuss the major part of the class was about how to deal with these different kinds of distress. So for distress that is inevitable, what do? We accept it. Accept it that sometimes life is in a particular way, that there will always be differences of opinion. We don't live in an ideal world. So when the distress comes, it can go towards two extremes. When there are misunderstanding or there are conflicts, that people are terrible or I am terrible. People are terrible and people just don't care. Or I am such that I am terrible, nobody will value me, nobody will love me, nobody will care for me. But in between is the balanced understandings. We try to learn what is actually going on, what is the actual cause of it. So accept means that there will always be differences of opinion. There will always be some incompatibility will be there. Some incompatibility will be there because we are all different individuals and we can't wish that away. And when we learn to accept it, that means it's unavoidable. To some extent, especially if there's a high level of incompatibility, we could say this is because of some past karma. That sometimes we all have to deal with difficult people. Nobody will have a pain-free or a problem-free life. So we accept that. At the same time, while some distress falls in this way, it is not all. We cannot consider all distress as just inevitable. So what is the next part? For the avoidable distress, what do? We correct it. Correct it means that we look at, when there is distress, we can look at it as all because of past karma. Past karma means we just have to tolerate it. Or we can say all because of present karma. So now both are extremes. So the balanced in between is what? We start with the drushta cause. So drushta is what is visible, so that is present karma. Look, try to understand, did I do anything wrong because of which this person is angry with me? This person is upset with me. And then go toward the adrushta. If we just rightly jump to the adrushta, then we will not fix the situation and we will create unnecessary suffering in our life. So in this connection I discussed about, so if it's a present cause, what do we do with it? How do we correct? I talked about two principles. First is, so we try to look inward. Have I done something that may have agitated this person? And the other is, give benefit of doubt. Now benefit of doubt, I explained what that means is, that whenever any problem comes up, we try to ascribe a cause to that problem. So benefit of doubt means we start with the least negative explanation, that is, it was a judgment error. everybody makes judgment errors in life. We all also make sometimes that. The more negative explanation is that the person just doesn't have the ability to do that. And the most damaging is the person's motive itself is bad. So don't go toward the negative motive. You start with the least motive. So we discussed this is how we can get out of jams in our relationship. And the last was, for strengthening things, what do? We train ourselves. We train ourselves that we want to, if we want to grow in our life, Krishna consciousness, we want to at one level deepen, but we also want to broaden our Krishna consciousness. Especially if we want to live in a community, we want to have a society, strengthening is deepening is important, but broadening is even more important. And broadening means that we try to learn, try to open ourselves to understanding why this person thinks in this way. So we talked about how in the Gita, even the enlightened enlighten each other still. When those who are enlightened, they enlighten each other. Because why? Because Krishna is so large, that reality is so large that the enlightened, they always have to, there's more to learn. Even when you understand that Krishna is the supreme object of love, there is so much more for us to learn about how Krishna is lovable and how we can love Krishna more. So with this understanding, whatever situations we are in, we can deal with those situations better, minimize the distress that is in our life, and grow towards Krishna. So let us conclude with the prayer that we offered right at the beginning. It's there in your book also if you want to go to it. You can repeat after me. My dear Lord, help me to learn how to help others to learn. Shri Krishna Bhagwan ki jai. Are there any questions? We have time for questions? Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, thank you so much for the class. I had a question on when we're noticing that, or when I'm noticing that I'm reacting defensively when someone is accusing me of something. It's, my emotions get very involved in this. So how can I, when I'm starting to see this happen, do you have any suggestions for how to create some distance from that emotional reaction and stop that defensive reaction?
If you're looking for a foolproof way of doing this, I can only say that when I find out, I'll tell you. It is difficult. No, I can speak all this, but when somebody annoys me, I also sometimes, it happens that I explode. Although it's decreasing as I'm practicing bhakti more and more, but it's a challenge. So, I think Krishna talks about mind management with two principles. Abhyasena tu kaunteya, vairagyena cha gruyate. So, now these two terms, abhyas and vairagya, can be understood in different ways, but I will take a particular framework. So abhyasa, it can mean practice, but what is the practice for? The practice is to build our bonds. Or we want to fix the mind on Krishna so that we can build a bond with Krishna. We can build, we want to hear so that we can build a bond with our spiritual master, with Srila Prabhupada, with senior devotees. So that is one aspect, is abhyasa. Now the other is vairagya. Now vairagya can be understood as boundaries. That the way to manage the mind's urges and impulses is to have bonds and boundaries. So I'll give an example of each of these. Bonds and boundaries means that when in the Ramayana, when Bharat comes back to the kingdom after Ram has been exiled, he's aghast to know what Kaikeyi has done. And he somehow pulls himself together, performs the last rites of his father. And then after that, they're coming back to the palace from the river. At that time, a courtier approaches him. So he's talking with that courtier while Shatrughna moves forward. And Shatrughna sees that they're passing by Kaikeyi's palace, and from there, Manthara comes out. Now, Manthara is the person who has instigated Kaikeyi. And he sees that Manthara is decorated in very opulent clothes and very costly ornaments. Now, Kaikeyi had provided her, gifted her lavishly. And she was so proud of, she was so proud of having such costly things to wear, and that there was no sense of awareness. The kingdom is in mourning, the king has passed away. Just now people are coming from the funeral. She was wearing such clothes. Seeing that, Shatrughna just lost it. Shatrughna charged towards her. And she noticed that Shatrughna, she had to run away. And she called out to Kaikeyi. But Shatrughna just pounced on her, grabbed her, and started shaking her violently. He said, "You are the cause of the ocean of agony and pain that has drowned all of Ayodhya." He says, "You are the wretched person who has destroyed our entire kingdoms and family's peace." So Kaikeyi came running out. Kaikeyi told Shatrughna, "Stop." Shatrughna paid no attention to her. Then Bharat heard the commotion. Bharat came over there. And at that time, Kaikeyi ran to Bharat. "Bharat, stop. Stop, Shatrughna." Bharat didn't even look at Kaikeyi. He said to Shatrughna, "Shatrughna, what you are doing right now, I have felt that same urge to do it a dozen times over." He says, "But we want to go to the forest and call Ram back. If Ram comes to know that we have attacked either Manthara or Kaikeyi, he will be very unhappy with us. So he says, for Ram's sake, let her go." And immediately what happens is Shatrughna lets her go. So for us, especially if our devotion is real, it is not just a ritual that we are doing, then for a devotee, in every interaction, there is the bond means I am here, the other person is here, but Krishna is also here. So I am not just interacting with the other person based on how the other person interacted with me. For a devotee, there is also the consideration that how can I serve Krishna in this situation? How can I please Krishna in this situation? Or if I cannot please, how can I at least not displease? Or displease as less as possible. So when we have that bond with Krishna, then what happens is this person may have done something terrible to me, but because I have that bond, then I won't hit back at that person. It all happens to us also. So if we have a close friend and a relative of that close friend behaves not properly with us, we may be very angry with that person and we may want to attack that person. But for our friend's sake, we may say, okay, I'm not going to do anything. Or at least I'm not going to do what I would normally do. So having a bond is what helps us a lot. And the bond can be with Krishna, the bond can be with our spiritual master, the bond can be with, okay, I have my community leaders and we are a part of a community. So having a bond with something higher helps us to restrain our impulses. Now the other is boundaries. Now our bond with Krishna helps. Now what does boundaries mean in this context? That boundaries means that for all of us, we all have certain lines that we will not cross, no matter how angry we get. We may raise our voice, but maybe we will not use obscenities. Even if we use obscenities, maybe we will not use our fists. Maybe we will not use a knife. We all have certain boundaries which we do not want to cross. But what happens is these boundaries, when we let ourselves become controlled by our impulses, we start violating our own boundaries. Now the boundaries can be given by society, it can be given by culture, it can be given by tradition. That's all that true. But it is such that even the boundaries that we create for ourselves, those boundaries also we don't stick to. So what happens is once we start going down those boundaries, so we may say that we can have many boundaries. So for all of us, certain boundaries, if we cross, that is problematic. okay, it's not a good thing. I don't want to yell at anyone in public. It's problematic. But there are some boundaries which will be absolutely unacceptable to cross. This is something which I will never do. For example, I may yell at someone, but I'm not going to use obscenities. Or no matter what happens, sometimes there's typical office politics. So, one person may spread some rumor about other person or speak something bad about other person. And that way they try to ingratiate themselves with the management and try to rise upwards. And this is not a pleasant part of life, but this is a part of life. But even when there's office politics, there are boundaries. Somebody will say, okay, I might speak some gossip about this person, but I'm not going to speak some gossip about their wife or their daughter. There are lines which you do not cross. So the problem is that once we start crossing one line repeatedly, it's a slippery slope. And we start crossing further and further. So whatever it is, the other person has done, that needs to be dealt with. But while dealing with the other person, if we are aware, I don't want to become like that. Not just like the other person or whatever. No, whatever happens, I don't want to become like that person. Or I don't want to behave like that. So if we have those boundaries clearly for us, and that's why scriptural study, association, it helps us to have a sense of strong boundaries. Then what will happen is, we may still go off in our behavior, but we won't go way, way too far down. And now, generally speaking, is best is if we have bonds and boundaries. This is where we are what happened here? This is where we are the safest. Now, if we have neither bonds nor boundaries, we are the weakest. That means we have no higher person that we want to please. So someone for whom we want to do something good or not become bad. And we have not defined our sense of boundaries also. Then it can go to any degree. So generally, say when people are young men may get into a fight and they may get into a violent fight also sometimes. But if that same person gets married, has a family, has children, I cannot get into these things now. The sense of that bond leads to a sense of bond. In one sense, we keep ourselves guarded by that. Now, if we have only boundaries but no bonds, then sooner or later we'll feel suffocated. What will happen is, we'll start feeling that, why can't I do this? I can't do this. So, in general, rules are like roads. Roads have certain barriers at the side of the roads. But the point of being on the road is not just to stay within the barriers. The point is to go somewhere, isn't it? So if you only have the barriers, but you're not going in any direction, then you feel, why do I have to stay within the boundaries? So I want to stay within these boundaries so that I can have a better relationship with this person. I can have a better relationship with Krishna, whatever it is. So sometimes we may not have a better relationship with that person, but our behavior with that person can harm our relationship with everyone else also, with others who are connected with that person. So in that sense, if there are only boundaries with no bonds, that will be a problem. If there are only bonds but no boundaries, then we'll remain vulnerable. Yes, I love Krishna, I care for you, but then I go to any direction. When the urge comes, I just go in any direction. So we want to have, if we have bonds and boundaries, then we can be safe. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? No, yeah. It's a long answer. I'll try to keep the other answers short. It's a very important question, actually. Thank you for asking it.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for this nectar that we got for 2 days. Really, Krishna's blessings that you were here and gave us all that wisdom. I just want to share a little bit about how I got connected with you, and then I also have a leading question. So, few months back, there was this Bhakti Yoga conference, which I came to know from this center itself, and I joined that, and it was all virtual, and so one session was from you, and I really got very interested and intrigued by how you have connected the Gita lessons with science and spirituality together. So really intricated me, and I started following you from there. So, and then I started looking at your calendar and I saw that you were coming to our town. And so I really wanted to come and, just see you and learn from you more and more. So thank you for that. And I'm really, thank you to Krishna because he also allowed me to come here and listen to you for these 2 days. I also learned about your story, and I really, from all of us, I want to do 3 Haribols for your mother, if you would allow, because I feel that she plays a big part in what we have today. So if you all are with me,
yesterday I mentioned
please.
about, just to tell those who are not here, so yesterday
Yeah.
I mentioned that when I got polio, it was quite it was when I was 1 and I was given a vaccine that was defective. That's how I got the polio, but I couldn't walk normally after that. But when I was growing up, I was about 2.5 or 3, and a relative had come to our home, and distant relative, and she was consoling my mother, saying, "So sad that your son got polio." And I remember my mother's words, very calm, clear, confident. She said, "Whatever he lacks physically, God will provide him intellectually."
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. And then my question is the discussion we just had about the question that Mataji asked. So we live in our boundaries, that's true, but there are certain people in our life we love a lot. They are either our family or very close friend. And even with our boundaries, their behaviors are not acceptable. If I want to do something back, through my Krishna consciousness, I am thinking that I am destroying my karma, which I don't want to do. So I want to walk away, but how many times do I walk away from how many people? And does that mean that it's like at some point I'll start feeling like it's my fault, I'm walking away from everyone and I'm losing every loved one? So that's just my internal struggle here.
Yeah. Thank you for your kind words first, and thank you for talking about my mother also. So this is an important question. It'll take me 1 hour to answer this. I'll try to answer in a few minutes. See, broadly speaking, tolerance is an important virtue. But tolerance is not the only virtue. Tolerance has a purpose. If you look at the Bhagavad-gita, there is a sequence. 2.14 talks about tolerance. Now, 2.15 talks about transcendence. What will happen when we tolerate? He says, Yam hina vyathyantete purusham purusharbha sama dukkha sukham dhiram somrutattvaya kalpate. We will attain a higher level of consciousness. We will grow. And before this, Krishna talks about intelligence. Dehi nosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tata dehantar prapti dhiras tata namuyati. He's basically differentiating. There's a body that is temporary and a soul that is eternal. So now intelligence means that, if you want to understand, intelligence means to know what are the big things in our life and what are the small things in our life. Srila Prabhupada defines intelligence as to see things in their proper perspective. Proper perspective means sometimes you're taking a selfie. Then what happens? We become very big, everybody else becomes small. You may say, no, I don't want to look like this. Let somebody else take the photo. Proper perspective means things are seen as they are. So what is big and what is small? Now tolerance is based on intelligence. Tolerance is meant to keep small things small so that we can keep big things big. So that we can keep big things big. So for example, Krishna is telling Arjuna to tolerate. But what is he telling him to tolerate? Does he mean that, oh, the Kauravas have committed so many atrocities to you, tolerate all those atrocities, no need for you to fight? That's not what he's saying. He's saying that you have to fight against Bhishma and Drona, that is painful for you, but tolerate it. Because this is your dharma. Fighting is your dharma. So for Arjuna at that time, fighting against Bhishma and Drona had become the big thing. So how can I fight against them? But you are not fighting against them. You are fighting for dharma. And Duryodhana is adharma personified, and they have chosen the side of adharma. So what the big thing is, you need to keep it the big thing. So for all of us in our relationships, we need to have this perspective of what is the big thing. And transcendence means what? The big thing actually we reach the biggest thing in our life. That means Krishna becomes a living, loving reality for us, and ultimately we attain Krishna. So that is the sequence, that's the progression over here. So for us, we may have to decide, if somebody is misbehaving with us repeatedly, what is the big thing over here? If that person's behavior is not a big issue, that person is not a very important person in our life, okay, we once in a while interact with them. Maybe once a year, once in 6 months, we interact with them at some social gatherings. Just forget it and let's go on. But if that person is regularly interacting with us and is hurting us, so then we are getting agitated, we are just not able to function, then we may have to do something so that we can protect ourselves. So we are not taking revenge. When I talk about boundaries, one is we want to stay within our boundaries. But boundaries can also mean that we create some boundaries to keep a distance from the other person. So it is important that we be able to do our dharma properly. So for example, in our workplace, maybe the boss or some colleague is very exploitative, abusive, manipulative, and we are constantly agitated. And because of that, we come back home and take it out all on our family. We get angry with our spouse, we get angry with our children. Now, because of that, if you're not able to do our dharma over here, then we may need to decide what do I do over here. Maybe I change my team, maybe I change my job, maybe I file some complaint or fight this issue. So the idea is we have to be able to keep the big thing big. And many times we talk about our karma. Now the purpose of life is not going to be fulfilled simply by exhausting our past karma. Sometimes it is said that, if some person is causing you suffering, it is because of your past karma. And that is true. But the purpose of life, it is not, that's one part of it, but the purpose of life will be fulfilled not so much by exhausting our past karma, but by executing our present dharma. It is that we don't want just to execute remove what is negative from our past karmic record, but we want to do something positive in our life. Say if, consider spirituality, say if some relational situation is so bad that when we sit down to chant Krishna's name, we sit down to pray to Krishna, we are just not able to focus at all. Then we may say tolerate, but if we are not able to fix the mind on Krishna, then we have to do something. Better create a distance from that person. Sometimes, just we have to decide that there are many different ways of functioning with people. Sometimes we have to cooperate because we have to work together. But sometimes we decide we cooperate. Cooperate means you operate here, I'll operate here. You take up this particular responsibility, I'll take up this responsibility. And then we don't have to interact so much. Some people just can't work together. But just because they can't work together does not mean that they have to constantly be criticizing each other and ruining each other's relationship or ruining each other's lives. Just create some space. We may have to have some hard conversations to be able to tell that person why we need that distance. But we can, instead of having the person close and having bitterness, it is better to create some distance, and if not warmth, at least have some cordiality, some politeness at least. So I think we all have to be responsible and resourceful about how to deal with such situations. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji, very, very much.
Thank you. Last question, stop with this.
Prabhu, I have a question. Prabhu, at the beginning of the talk, you made first of all, thank you for a wonderful talk, Prabhu. It's been enlightening for the last 2 days. And I hope we continue the Buddha to the Buddhavanti so we can spread the enlightenment amongst us. You made a statement at the beginning, Prabhu, that reciprocation is a basic foundation for any interaction or relationship. And then you categorize into two, transactional and transformational. So my first question is if you can explain them a little bit more. And the second question is, if we see this that's lacking in a relationship, the reciprocation is lacking, does that mean we should end the relationship? Or that's too strong a statement?
If reciprocation is lacking in a relationship, okay, what does transactional and transformational mean? Say, if you're just going to somewhere to eat some food, and there's some takeout places where you get some food. You might get vegetarian food also, we have to take it. So we just walk there, we take the food. Sometimes you can't even see who the person is. You just see their hand, you put some money and you take it out. But say if we come to a temple, and we're coming regularly to temple, and somebody's serving prasadam, then we talk with that person, maybe we sit down and take prasad with them afterwards. And then it's a transactional interaction. So it's not a transactional, it's a transformational interaction. We come closer to that person comes closer to us. Maybe we learn something more. So in that sense, that's the difference between transactional and transformational. Now, when I was saying that there's a transaction, there is some interaction, some reciprocation, the reciprocation does not always be in proportion. That, say, if you consider parents do much more for a child at a practical level than what the child does for the parents. So, but then, because at the physical level, the parents do a lot for their child, but at the emotional level, the child fulfills the parents' need to nurture someone, to care for someone. We all have a deep need to be needed. I saw that very nice quote at your home. It put about your son, I think, or about your daughter, that we did not give you the gift of life. Life gave you as a gift to us. It's beautiful thought over there. So the idea is that there can be reciprocation at different levels. In some reciprocations, it may happen that we may do a lot for the other person, and the other person may be doing less for us. And that's fine, if that's what is the nature of the relationship. A teacher may teach much more to the student. The student, what they do for the teacher? Well, not much. They attend the talk, attend the classes or whatever. Of course, you can say they are paying fees to the college or fees for tuition, that's there. But basically, for any interaction, based on what kind of reciprocation is there, the closeness or the distance in the relationship will accordingly naturally come. If the teacher-student interaction, the teacher sees that the student is very interested and very attentive, then maybe the student comes and asks some questions after the talk. The teacher and the student come closer to each other. But if the student is just waiting, when does the class get over, and okay, class over, the teacher looks down, looks up, there's nobody in the class left. All the students have run away. Then okay, there's a job, I'll do it, but it's not so. I think the intimacy or closeness in a relationship will be affected by the nature of the reciprocation. Should we end the relationship? Well, it depends. I think ending is a bit, as I said, strong, but it depends. Say if we have some distant relative or some childhood friend, every year we wish them for their birthday, or every year we do something about them, and they never respond also, they never acknowledge also. We decide, why do I need to keep spending time on this? That's fair enough. But in some relationships, it may be that as a service, we feel this is important for me. So I think again, we do decide what is the big thing or what is the small thing over there. If we decide that, then we can decide that in spite of the reciprocation not coming, I'll continue doing this. And sometimes we decide that if reciprocation is not coming the way I expect, then what is the need to do this? We can decide accordingly. Okay? So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki. Nitai Gaur Premanande.